It's episode 50 of Leadership Happy Hour.
It's Leadership Happy Hour, the podcast for the busy professionals who want strategies that work from people who have actually led. First round is on us. Kick back and enjoy. Here's your host, a leader who has been fire baptized and is mother approved, the unconventional leader, Chip Lutz.
Well, hello, friends. Well, it is episode 50 and our year anniversary here at Leadership Happy Hour. And you know what that means? Absolutely nothing. Well, it made me sit back and reflect a little bit about all the cool people I've gotten to talk to this year. I've got to talk to, Charlie Plum and Mark Sanborn, all these incredible leaders, Lori Guest, Phil Gerbishak, all these people that have taught me a lot over the course of the year. And I hope that you've gotten as much from them as I've gotten. I've also got to share some pretty significant life things with you. My kids joining the Navy, the launch of my new book, Get Past the Crap. It's just been a really fun year, and I'm looking forward to another year here on Leadership Happy Hour. And nothing says awesome like my guest today, Sarah J. Gibson. We talk about dealing with some of those difficult team members, how you create a winning team, and sometimes how you just need to kick a cat. So sit back, pop yourself open a cold one, and enjoy. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to Leadership Happy Hour. Like I've told you before, I get to talk to a lot of really cool people when I travel around, and today is no exception because I get to talk to my good friend, Sarah Gibson. Now, a little insight on here is Sarah and I are in a mastermind together, and even though we are fundamentally different in a lot of different ways, we are really, really parallel on the way we approach a lot of things. We didn't really realize that till we're sitting there. It's like, man, that's exactly something I would say. At least that's what I was thinking. And so today we're going to, she's an expert on generational diversity, team diversity, handling difficult situations. And today we get the benefit of her enormous brain. And so welcome, Sarah, to Leadership Happy Hour, my friend. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you, and thank you, Chip. I'm super excited, and I have to say on the mastermind front, just talking with you, I actually told my husband later on, I'm pretty sure that Chip and I are the same person in different bodies, so I feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Different bodies. I mean, because if it were the same body, then I'd be sleeping with your husband.
It'd be awkward.
It would be a little awkward. It would be
totally.
I mean, he's a handsome guy, and I have no issues with that. I'm just saying that it would be a little awkward. So, obviously, I know a little bit about you, but if you could give, our listeners like the 411, the hot skinny on Sarah Gibson.
This is always the hardest question for me. It's like, what do you really want to know about me? So let me give you the baseline. I am a wife. I'm a mom. I am an entrepreneur. I primarily do training and speaking on different pieces related to both leadership and team building. And I do all kinds of kind of quirky things on the side, like rose mauling and chopping wood. You just never know.
What is rose mauling? What is that?
Rose mauling is a Norwegian style of painting. So it's a very stylistic painting that is tied to different regions in Norway. And I'm Norwegian, and my mom always did it. And I live in a Norwegian town that offers classes, so now I do it.
Interesting. Now, when you do that, do you have to eat lutefisk and saltines while you're doing that?
I refuse the lutefisk, but I will go with lefse.
See, I can't even pronounce it right because I'm not Norwegian. You corrected me. It was so eloquent a way. No, not lutefisk. I just watched a documentary one time, and it had that on there, and I was like, that is not anything I would ever eat in my entire life. And for our listeners, if you don't know what it is, Google it, Lutefisk.
Yes, and you did say it correctly. Just so you know, you said it correctly, but I went with lefse, which is like the potato pancake thing.
Okay.
I'll eat that, but I won't do the fish thing because that's disgusting. It's like fish soaked in lye.
Now, how did you start off in the whole, leadership teamwork world? I mean, how did that all work?
Yeah, so I was on the path to teaching at the university and the university level of things, which requires a PhD. And that I thought was my destiny. And I went back to school and I got a master's degree and I was enrolled in a PhD program because I thought, I want to teach. I love this piece of things. And then I realized I don't like doing research for other people, and I like to do my own research.
Right.
So I didn't want to tie into 7 years of doing research for someone else. And I thought, what do I do with this passion for working with people? What else is there? And corporate training kind of came to the surface, and I had a fantastic job working with a company here in Madison, Wisconsin that I work with, and it was a great opportunity. I got to do all kinds of development pieces, and every time I taught a class, someone would say, Sarah, do you do this outside the company because my husband's company needs this, or I know a company that needs this? And from there, it kind of happened. It was one of those pieces of, okay, it's now or never. We had our first child, and I was traveling a lot, and it's like, okay, can we make this happen? And hung a shingle, and here we are 13 years later.
That's interesting. That's, a common theme that I hear with a lot of people that, same way it happened with me with speaking is that I was teaching some graduate classes and some of my grad students started asking me to come speak, for their associations. And then I was like, hey, I think I would like to do this all the time. And so
yeah,
that's how it happened.
Exactly.
It wasn't like
when
I was a tiny kid, like when I was a tiny kid, I was hanging out with all my friends and some of my friends were talking about being firemen or policemen. And I'm like, I want to be a speaker. It wasn't like that at all.
Right. Which I could see there are people who are like that, but you and I are not like that. My thing was I could always visualize myself teaching, and I just didn't know what that looked like. And speaking is just a form of teaching to large groups in my perspective.
Now, I know you have a lot of, expertise in the whole, generational diversity thing, and which is cool to me, but I also know that, you have a passion for, going in and helping people or helping organizations, kind of correct their dysfunctional teams. So, with that, what are some of the biggest things, or actually, let me go back, what are some of the biggest dysfunctions you've seen in your travels with different teams? What are the things that have happened out there? You're like, oh my God, this is like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, a couple of them come to mind. And the first one that popped into mind was I was working with a group, and they brought me in to work with their entire company, which was about 40 people. So they had their managers, their supervisors, all that sort of thing. One of the managers actually threw something at me because he didn't like what I said. And it wasn't like, I'm tossing this as a joke. It was like, I'm angry and I'm going to throw this at you. And I looked at him and I said, so when you're ready to pick that up, it'll be sitting right here. And I just walked away. But I thought, really? Your leaders are doing this. This is so dysfunctional.
Holy crap, that is crazy.
Right? I know.
No, it'd be different if you had given them props ahead of time. It's like, here's some rotten tomatoes and some cabbage. If I say something, just toss it at me. But it wasn't like that. It was just completely impromptu.
It was impromptu, and he was angry. And what the other dysfunctional piece that happened was I walked away from it intending that he would correct himself in the process. And somebody from his table got up and picked it up for him because he held enough power over this person to insist that I'm not going to do that. This person over here can do that for me. And it just like fed into this massive, crazy conversation. Yeah.
So interesting. Well, and that brings up like a good thought for me as far as, that's the way it is a lot of time on a lot of teams is that you have this one person that for whatever reason, maybe it's their attitude, maybe they've been there so long that nobody wants to, confront them. Maybe they're afraid of them, but that whole power-based thing is, can be a big factor, I would think, in a dysfunctional team.
Absolutely. And it can be an official power base, like a manager, supervisor, or it can be the power that one person holds over the team for whatever reason. And I've seen groups that said, they came in and they said, we have to instant message everybody in the office because this one woman won't let us talk out loud. And that was how their whole day went, is they instant messaged each other because this woman wouldn't let them talk, or she'd like have a conniption, and they didn't want the conniption. So they just kowtowed to her bad behavior.
Oh my goodness. I hate instant messaging, by the way. Honestly, I worked in an office place that was instant messaging. I would leave Mosh Kosh because I can't stand that. Because it's such an interruption to my day. Because people want to like message back and forth. It's just like, if you want to talk to me, just come talk to me. I do not want to do this. It's way too complicated.
Right. Well, and again, it's that whole power dynamic of how does one person control the behavior of the rest of the team and decide what the rest of the team gets to do? That's the piece that becomes really dysfunctional. And why do you let that person have that power? That is just odd to me. I don't understand it.
Well, okay, but let's delve into that a little bit. All right, so you're in that kind of environment. I mean, you're obviously brought in for a reason. You got that going on, and we can get into some other dysfunctions, but we're talking about this one right here. So, you go in, this is dynamic. I mean, how do you deal with something like that? Because I think it's something everybody deals with. We got sometimes, I've been on a few teams where it's been like the A team, where everybody knows what they have to do and they all do it and it's awesome. But I've been on other teams where it's just like, holy shit, I can't wait to get out of this place, because of that one person. Absolutely. So, what do you do?
Right. Well, I think that there's a piece in there, and this ties back to your leadership happy hour. There is a piece to this where there is peer-to-peer accountability, and the peers have to talk to each other and they have to hold each other accountable. I'm like, I'm not going to let you treat me that way. But there's also a manager piece of why would the manager let that behavior go on? And so you've got to figure out, and we delve into some of those pieces from a leadership perspective, more on a one-on-one aspect. But really, how does that contribute to your end goal or any of the outcomes that you have for the year, and how is that holding back your outcomes? So if you can tie it back to performance and performance objectives, that usually neutralizes the conversation for the manager to go, oh, I have to do that now. And then as far as the team goes, they just haven't known or had permission or space to talk about it. So that's a lot of what I do, is provide that permission in that space. And I will just call it out and say, okay, we're going to talk about the ugly stuff here. What does that look like? What kind of working agreements can we create that work for everybody and not just one person?
I like that, because I'm a firm believer that, accepting crappy behavior makes it acceptable behavior. That, if you don't do anything with it, it's just going to remain. And that, what you're telling me there is that you're helping people then, do something with that versus just accept, what is going on. Because I think that we get so used to the way things are that sometimes it's difficult to go against that. And it's almost changing the rules to the game in some ways, is that, people, play by a certain, rule book or playbook, and they get really confused when you change the rules to that game. And sometimes that's good. That puts you in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of like dysfunctional families where you get into these patterns of behavior and you don't even realize that they're unhealthy patterns until somebody steps in and says, what do you mean that person always gets like twice the amount of food at the table than everybody else? Why does that happen? And they just need a neutral voice sometimes to help them identify, like, this isn't normal or okay.
See, I wish somebody would have done that when I was growing up, because I always ate more. That's why I was a fat kid. So if somebody had come in and said, no, Chip doesn't need to eat that much, quite possibly I would have had a different relationship with food.
Maybe. And I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters and totally get the idea of, hey, if I reach faster than anybody else, I get my fair share. And if I'm really smart about it and hide what I'm eating, then nobody knows that I got 4 extra cookies.
Well, it's funny because I grew up, I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. So it's, and we're both the youngest. For all those listening, our family's to 6. We're both the youngest. Those are something else we have in common. But
I know, weird.
It is really weird. The next one closest in age to me is 5 years older than I am. So my last 5 years at home, I was kind of like an only child. So my mom worked night shifts, so she slept during the day. So I would go through the freezer, and like I remember one day there was a pie in there, and I cooked it for myself. And at the end of the day, there was like 1 slice that she's like, "Who made this pie?" I was like, "I did." She's like, "Don't do that anymore."
Oh, that's funny. I used to be really sneaky. Like, I loved Cool Whip, and I would take it from the freezer and I'd try to scrape it off so you couldn't tell that I'd eaten the top inch. But,
Right. It was like me stealing my dad's cigarettes. When I was in high school, I would take 2 packs out. I would take a pack from the back, and I'd slide those 2 packs back in. And then finally one day he's like, look, if you're going to smoke, buy your own damn cigarettes. I'm not footing your habits. And I was like, okay, Dad. Anyway.
Oh, that's funny. That's right. I never did that one.
For our listeners here, I don't smoke anymore. That was just, it was a high school through being 40 habit. Anyway, so So we got these dysfunctional people
Yes.
on the team, and those require some, pretty difficult conversations, I would imagine. And I know that's one of the other fortes you have is, helping people have those difficult conversations. And I know as a leader, sometimes those are, difficult conversations are difficult. I mean, obviously, but they're just having those can be the hardest thing in addressing that difficult behavior. So, I mean, what are some steps that you help people so they can kind of push through their own insecurities and have that kind of conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think one of the things that has been most helpful for me, both personally and professionally, is helping teams identify what is my perception of the situation and what actually happened. What were the behaviors that happened? Because so much of the dysfunction comes from my perception of what's going on. So you just said this, and of course, this is what you meant, because over our long history together, every time you said that, you implied I'm a moron. Well, actually, I wasn't implying you were a moron. That's your perception, but the behavior was I was just questioning the decision because I needed to understand more fully the why behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my work is around that, neutralizing the perception and getting down to what are the actual describable behaviors. And I can control my behaviors. So if your perception is you think I'm a moron or you're treating me like a moron, then I can look at the behaviors and go, actually, that's just his need to know it himself. Mm-hmm. That's very different than him questioning my intellect in that front. So that's a really big piece of what I do.
So what you're saying there, what I hear you saying anyhow, is that perception is not really reality. Reality is reality.
My perception is reality when I'm the one who has the perception, but when I actually get into my perception and start telling the story behind it and realizing where the perception comes from, that's what neutralizes it. So right. Yes, perception is reality, and reality is shaped by behaviors, and I can control behaviors.
Interesting. So you got this person. Let's make up a name for this person. We'll call her
sure.
Marge. All right. So okay. Marge is that person that is super difficult to work with. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She makes a really hostile working environment. You talk to her a little bit and help get to the root of it. What are some of the next steps on helping Marge come into the light? Or is it everybody else's responsibility for them to come into light and adapt to Marge?
I think it's always two ways. I think there's usually give and take in these scenarios. And for Marge's sake, I think that there's probably some coaching that goes along with this, whether that be with an outside party or with a manager, but really realizing she probably doesn't realize how she impacts people. There are a few people out in the world that are truly, honestly jerks. They're just complete and absolute jerks. But the reality is most people don't wake up and think, I'm going to piss off so-and-so today. That's going to be fantastic.
I wake up.
And yet that's what they do.
That's what that truthfully, you just described me. That's me. I wake up, it's like, who am I going to piss off?
Every morning?
Every morning. So you know what? I got a chip on my shoulder. I want to take it out on other people. So what am I going to do?
So bring me a cat. I need to kick a cat today.
I need to kick a cat. Oh, I love that. And that's a tweetable moment, my friends. There you go. I need to kick a cat today. # leadership happy hour.
That's right. There you go. I will retweet that when you put that out there. But I think that back to the scenario, I think that Marge doesn't realize how she impacts people. And so those are the difficult conversations that need to happen. You may not be aware, but when this behavior happens, and again, behavior can be changed, this is people's perception of you. So what are some things we can do to moderate that behavior so that it is give and take? And, when trust has been broken, that's, a whole nother issue in the process. But your job in adapting to other people is to build trust. Their job, is to build trust with you in this process. So it is give and take. And I usually function with the belief that most people want to do better. Occasionally you end up with people who don't. And those are scenarios where you go, how do we coach this person out of this role? Because clearly it's impacting the team.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of those people work within the federal government and you can't coach them out.
because they're permanent, or state systems,
Like I used to tell my
or
ex-wife,
unions.
like I used to tell my ex-wife, she was a federal employee. I'm like, I said, once she got vested, I said, man, you're like herpes. They can't get rid of you. I mean, she didn't really like being referred to as a herpy, but and that wasn't the cause.
Yeah, I imagine that didn't do a whole lot for your relationship.
No, it wasn't the cause of our divorce. However, it wasn't something I should have said. I'm just throwing that out there. And I actually, and it's not the case for all. I work with a lot of federal agencies, and you have a great percentage of the people that work really hard, but you have a great another percentage that really just kind of ride the system, and that those are the ones that really irritate the people that are out there every day doing what they can do to make a difference, and they just get frustrated by the system that they're in, that you can't coach people out. Anyway, that was my segue on my love for the federal government, having spent 25 years with it. So anyway, I completely lost my train of thought. What are some other, because I went off down a rabbit hole, what are some other like big dysfunctions you've seen as you've been out there, fighting the fight?
I think that it's people, one of the really easy things to fix within a dysfunctional team is when you have a misunderstanding over whose responsibility it is to do what. But when I think that I have responsibility to take care of the ERP system and you think you have responsibility, when you step into my territory, all of a sudden I'm fighting over that piece of it. And like, no, I just changed this. Well, I came in and I changed it too. And that's an easy one to fix, like clearly identify job responsibilities and roles. What's not clear about that process is it's not always clear cut because the process is messy. So maybe in this instance, it makes sense for, person B to do it. In this instance, person A. But generally, that type of dysfunction doesn't become as caustic as kind of the personal communication pieces. Those tend to become the hardest ones to deal with.
So are you saying it's more of it's not a system problem then? What you're saying then, it's a person problem?
I'm saying the system ones are really easy to fix. The person problem ones are really hard to fix.
Right, because people are messy.
Yeah.
People are really
people are messy.
They are.
Yeah,
and organizations are full of people. Ergo, organizations are messy places. So
yep.
They are chock full of messes. It would be nice if there were no messes, but unfortunately, because people are involved, there are messes everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you can, again, face it with that good intent, that most people have good intent. Most people want to make a positive difference on their team. They just haven't been given the tools to do that. So, neutralizing perception into behaviors is a tool. I talk a lot about skills that are listed in the Crucial Conversation book of CPR is one of my favorites, which is content, pattern, relationship. I want to keep my disagreements at the content level so it doesn't become a pattern. It doesn't impact my relationship then. Some of those things are just really simple language pieces that you give the team to moderate themselves as they move forward. But they haven't had any of the tools to get to the point of actually having the conversation. So that's a lot of it.
I've never heard that whole CPR acronym before. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love that. It's one of my favorites.
Can we delve a little deeper into that? Because
sure.
I want to understand a little bit more. So you got go over it again with me. CPR, content.
Yep. CPR, content, pattern, relationship.
Okay.
And in essence, let's say Alex, who is my admin, there's a content piece as far as she always uses a font that I don't like. Can be something as simple as that. And I don't say something to her from the get-go because I don't want to rock the boat, or I think, oh, I'm making a big deal of nothing. Mm-hmm. Well, after the fifth document that comes across my desk in this really stupid font that I hate, I have this pattern piece where each time I see the document, like my heart clenches and I go, oh, it's so stupid. Why doesn't she know what I want? All those things. That's part of the pattern piece.
Right.
And ultimately, it can impact my relationship where I jump to conclusions automatically about Alex when the reality is it was a really simple content issue. And if I had addressed it as content, we could have moved forward.
And I guess addressing it early versus just letting it sit there and fester for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's really what that whole piece is about.
Which sometimes as leaders we tend to do. We tend to especially if we've been working with people for a while, we tend to just assume that people know what we want. and that they're just doing stuff to purposely irritate the ever living shit out of us, and that
Yes.
we just sit there and let it fester, and then finally something else might happen which is completely unrelated to the fonts, but then we go off about everything that is irritating us, when really it was about the font. It really wasn't about this issue over here. It was over
Exactly.
Interesting.
And we're back to kicking the cat.
Yeah. I just want to kick a cat. That's gonna. I'm actually, if I remember, I'm gonna make sure I name that. I'm gonna name this episode. I just need a cat to kick, because it at least will garner some interest because people love cats. I don't personally.
Absolutely.
Do.
You might get some hate mail from that. I'm just saying.
That's all right. That's fine with me. Any email is good email. Now, for a leader to kind of recognize that, they've got to be kind of reflective. I would think that would take some kind of I'm not well versed in emotional intelligence, but I would think that would take some insight for themselves to realize what is going on around them to address things in that whole CPR manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that there's a tie there, and I think that from the CPR perspective, there's a sense of I need to be self-aware about what matters and what doesn't matter. Which battles do I pick? Which battles do I not pick? So I think that's one of the reasons why people avoid disagreements is, if I pick this battle, is it really worth the battle? And sometimes you've got to feel the emotional reaction to that, which is that emotional intelligence piece. And emotional intelligence really has 4 parts, which is I have to know myself, and then I have to manage myself. So I can know I'm a jerk, but if I don't do anything about it, that's not okay.
Right.
So I have to know myself and manage myself, and then I have to know others, and then I have to manage that relationship. And so as far as the CPR piece, it's a matter of I know myself. I know why I'm reacting that way. And now I have to manage myself. Is this a battle I pick or don't pick?
Mm-hmm.
And if I know the other person, did they do this on purpose, or did they do this because they have no idea that this is irritating to me? And have I even given them a chance to have a conversation before I judge them on the front of managing the relationship? I've judged you there. And that, it again can create a vicious cycle.
That's really interesting. So like I said, I don't know much about emotional intelligence, but that's very parallel to what I've always considered the three pillars of effective leadership: knowing yourself, knowing your people, and then taking those 2 things together in order to make mission, get things
done.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I guess I was pretty emotionally intelligent in that regard. That was
absolutely, of course, right?
Cue the laugh track. That was hilarious to me. Anyway.
No, it was.
So, so for a leader, because a lot of times, we're just so busy. We have these, we tend to romanticize the whole leadership role. We do. It's like, right. Oh, when I get to be a leader, it's going to be, it's going to be unicorns and cotton candy. It's going to be awesome. But quite frankly, it's a big pain in the ass a lot of times. And we are so busy all the time, putting out fires here and putting out fires there. We don't have time a lot of times to sit back and reflect on what's making the machine go. What am I doing? What are my people doing? So how do you help leaders do that?
I think it's helping them identify what are those in the moment things that I make snap decisions around that don't feel right. And I was just thinking about that as you talked, Chip. I was thinking about kids. Like there's a sense that I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I step into a role instantly, and I don't reflect on it. But 4 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I think that there should be systems and ways that we can help people identify what some of those red flags are. And it can be from, a verbal 360 where somebody comes in and talks to other teammates, and we identify, well, actually, these are the 4 themes that keep coming up when your folks talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the behaviors that drive those? Because again, I can change the behaviors. That's part of your knowing self piece, or the emotional intelligence knowing self. But if I'm completely unaware that that's happening, I need to get feedback from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So one common method is that 360, but sometimes it's just somebody going, I think that this relationship isn't going well, so I need someone else to observe this. What does that look like? Maybe you call on a trusted other leader in your department to say at meetings, could you just help me? Because let's debrief afterwards. I don't see this behavior, but clearly other people do. So what can I do better?
That's a good a good piece of advice. Like, I've got people that are my trusted advisors that I will reach out to afterwards. But even so, they're only getting my perspective on whatever the situation was. Asking somebody that is there to kind of give you feedback on the dynamics is, a much better strategy. So because they're seeing the whole thing versus just your view of things. I mean,
I think there's legitimacy. I think you can be legitimate in both of those. If they know you well, that's important. But I think respect is really the key in either scenario. It's somebody that you respect that you're going to listen to.
Well,
and
like
honestly,
my personal board of directors, people I reach out to, they know me well enough that they know, and they will call me on my BS. They'll be like, "No, I know you." That but a lot of times people will surround themselves with people, and we'll have people on their board of directors that agree with them and will commiserate with them, which is not just compounds the issue versus having somebody like you said that's objective, that maybe knows you well, or somebody that was there that can give you the full picture. It's like, no, you were completely being an asshole here, this person was saying this here, and then you're like, oh, you know what, you're right, I completely overreacted on that. So
and then taking the corrective step on the flip side of that, which is I completely overreacted on that. Now I have to put on my big boy pants and I have to go apologize, because that's what's going to produce change, is me owning my actions and moving forward.
Right. Well, I put on my big girl pants.
I like to, that's okay. I'll wear your pants. You wear mine. We're good.
I like to make sure that, I'm including both genders in anything that I do.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to feel anybody to feel excluded at all. But it was kind of funny when you were talking about kids, is that just, all my kids are grown, but you never stop being a parent. So I was just thinking about when your 14-year-old daughter, I mean, my 19-year-old son, I let him use my car this weekend when he was home, and then he was driving back in his own car back to South Carolina, and my other son was going to come out and drive my car back to see me, but he's like, Ben has your keys in his coat pocket, and he was already halfway to
South Carolina.
So I automatically slipped into parent mode. I'm like, well, how are you going to unscrew this? And then afterwards, I was like, you know what? I completely overreacted on this, because it wasn't my other son's fault. I mean, he wasn't one with the keys. And it was just kind of funny that I automatically slipped into being my dad versus really kind of sitting back and reflecting on the situation. Like, all right, what's the best way to go about, getting my car off the street?
Exactly. I'm probably snow effect days too, so that you're going to get a ticket one of these nights.
No, I'm sure that when I go pick it up, when the keys get here, because they're not here yet, I'm hoping they're here today. I'm sure I've got at least 2 tickets, and I'm sure my ex-wife is laughing every one that gets put in the window. Anyway,
as long as it's not impounded.
Not on her. I would laugh if it was her car too, simply, or anybody's car really. Because
there you go.
I'm just evil like that. So
you just need a cat to kick.
I just need a cat to kick. That is such a great phrase for my day today, because this has been one of those kind of days. I just completely lost my train anyhow, because
I know. Loop it back for us.
Kicking cats. All right, so helping leaders be a little more reflective, asking people to come in and give them some objective advice, good advice. What are some other advice you give leaders on, creating a great team? We've talked a lot about dysfunctional teams, but, I'm coming in, I'm brand new. I want to build this great team. What are some of the things? It's like, hey, Chip, you want to build a great team. These are some of the things you need to do right here.
I am a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni in this front, and he talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, but then he's flipped the model to be positive, the 5 cohesive behaviors. And I think that as a leader coming into a team, you need to be watching for these 5 cohesive behaviors, which are, the first one is trust. Do members of the team trust one another? And you're going to see that in a variety of ways, in the conversations that they have, in how they value each other's gifts, and say, I actually need all of you on this team. Mm-hmm. You're also going to see it in the world of conflict. Are they having the conflict that they need to have? Or are there voices that aren't being heard on that team? And so if you can identify how much trust there is on that team, you're going to see these other behaviors come out. If the team trusts each other, they have healthy conflict. And if they have healthy conflict, they commit to decisions together. And if they commit to those decisions, then they hold each other accountable, and ultimately they get results. So that's Lencioni's model. And I think that it's a really good, solid gauge of stepping into this team. How do I, first of all, assess where they're at? And second of all, then direct my energy and attention. Where do I need to put my time? Is it on the accountability piece? Is it on commitment? Because we say we're going to do things, but we don't. And why don't we do those things? And is it that we're not having conflict that's actually producing good results? What does that look like? So those are kind of my 5 baseline markers.
Good. Yeah, I like all those. I haven't read that book, but it's everything that's in alignment with the way I do things, along with kind of giving my team something to rally around. That's if they've got like a common focus, there's gonna be a little less backbiting, even if the common focus is to hate me, at least they're hating me and they're not hating each other.
They're united in it.
And they're moving. I mean, I had a couple of guys I worked for. I mean, they were masters at that. They were such jackholes that everybody it was by design. I mean, they would rather everybody on the team hate them than backbite, amongst each other. So they were, focused on what was going forward and like, oh yeah, I hate that guy there. So anyway.
and that's one effective way of doing it for sure. I would rather be the leader that has people going, actually, that was the best leader I've ever had. Sarah was the one that made sure that I was being developed, that, she knew where I was going and what I wanted to do. And she made sure that the team got along and we all worked in separate paths, but also together to those common results and that common mission that you mentioned.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'd always rather be loved, looking at Machiavelli and the prince, and is it better for a prince to be loved or to be feared? I'd always rather be loved personally, because that's just me. However, I've worked for leaders that our common bond was that we hated that person with a passion.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. So here's my side tangent for you today. So you've taken a couple. Mine is, there's this little piece of me that would really like, just for one day of my life, to be completely ruthless, just because I think I love the achievement factor of it, and I'd love the competition of it. I don't think I could do it ethically or morally, but I think it would be a fascinating experiment to, like, one day of my life to be able to be completely ruthless and then go, hey, look at what I did at the end of this day, and just to compare that one day to the rest of my life. And
put your finger up to your mouth like Dr. Evil and be like, and do your evil
right. Exactly.
That would be fantastic. And truthfully, if you're going to do that, I will be your trusted agent at the table to let you know if you're doing it right or not.
Perfect. That sounds like a deal.
Can you come in and see if I'm being a big enough of an a-hole? I just really want to make sure that I'm like taking it to the max, because I work with my sheriff. I know what it looks like, and I can tell you if you're doing it or not.
Perfect. And morale, I'm sure that day morale will be fantastic for the team.
It's just a day. Anybody can suffer through anything for a day. Now, I've really enjoyed talking to you, like I always do. And if after today people want to find you, where do they go?
There's a couple of ways you can find me. The best way is just Sarah J. Gibson, so it's SARAHJ as in Joe, Gibson, .com, or my other site, and they're both linked together, is Accent, ACCENT, LC as in learning and consulting.com. And either of those will take you to easy places to access email or phone to connect with me.
And I'd highly encourage anybody to check out Sarah's website, simply because it's one, a good website, but two, she's got some great videos on there with great content where you can, you need, obviously you want to bring Sarah into your, organization to help your team, but you also can learn a lot from just watching her videos and get some stuff from that. I mean, great content. I went through all of them today and I was like, man, that's great stuff. I learned a lot today.
Well, thank you. And as long as you mentioned that, I do have a YouTube channel. So it's Sarah J. Gibson is the channel. And there's like 50 or 60 videos out there, and little clips, and some are a little bit longer, but across all kinds of topics. So would love to have folks check those out.
And I highly encourage them to do so. Now, if we were at a bar, Sarah J. Gibson, J as in Joe, I would be like, oh, hey, Sarah, we'd be drinking. You should go do this. and you'd be like, oh, I'm not doing that. And then I would I triple dog dare you. But since we're not, I'm just going to ask you a few random questions for my overstuffed Would You Rather book. Are you game?
I'm game.
All right. I'm going to flip the pages here so you can hear them. I don't know if you can hear that or not. All right.
I can.
First question, Sarah J. Gibson. Would you rather laugh when you should cry and cry when you should laugh, or never be able to do either?
Oh, laugh when you should cry and cry when you should laugh. I already do that.
Yeah, I would. I don't want to do,
That to be emotionless would be hard.
Yeah. All right, second question. Sarah, would you rather pee in your pants at your wedding in front of everyone, or not being able to stop laughing at your grandmother's funeral?
Oh my goodness, what an option. I would laugh at my grandmother's funeral because I think she would forgive me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think everybody else would forgive you too if you peed your pants at your wedding. It's one of those things. It's on the assumption that you're wearing a white dress. Now, if you're wearing a black dress, nobody's going to notice.
Nobody's going to notice. Maybe that should be the secret of life from here on forward.
Well, that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, you're working for you should never be like peeing your pants in a dark suit, where you do it, nobody notices.
That's right. Exactly.
Anyway.
That's hilarious.
All right. Last question. All right, Sarah, this is the big one. This is the hard one right here. Would you rather have others watch a video of you on the toilet or a video of you throwing a childish temper tantrum?
This book is fantastic that you have. Probably the temper tantrum. Again, most likely because I've probably already done that in real life and moved forward.
Right. I don't know. The other one, you might get a lot of followers on YouTube. You just never know,
I'm not sure if they're my target audience, though. That would be the question.
I'm not. Okay, I'm going to shut up there. All right. It has been my pleasure talking to you today. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I've learned a lot.
Thank you, and cheers.
Cheers to you.
So how do you spell awesome on your 50th anniversary show? Sarah J. Gibson. Go to her website, sarahjgibson.com. Check it out. She is the bomb. She knows what she's talking about, as evidenced by our interview today. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at chip@unconventionalleader.com. That's chip@unconventionalleader.com. Shoot me your questions. I'll put them out to the experts. I'll answer them myself. Go to my website. Sign up for my newsletter, get some free content. Go to getpastthecrap.com and buy my new book. It will change your life forever. So until next time, this is Chip Lutz signing out.
Well, it's last call. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Leadership Happy Hour. Please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, and don't forget to visit Chip at www.unconventionalleader.com. He'd love to hear from you and about you and know what you'd like to hear on the show. Oh, and don't forget to tip your server. Until next time, cheers.